An Oregon man was convicted and sent to jail for collecting and using rainwater on his own property, sued by the state for theft. Rancher Gary Harrington built 3 large reservoirs on his own land to collect rainwater and snow melt. He claimed the water was primarily for fire protection reserves and for providing water to wildlife. But the state called it theft and prosecuted Gary. A municipal code stipulates that all water within city limits, including precipitation, is part of the public water supply. The city requested the court order the removal of his collection system and impose a fine. Despite Harrington's repeated appeals, arguing, "The water fell on my land, I'm not selling it. I'm simply using it on my own property." The court ultimately rejected his claims. Harrington was found guilty on multiple charges, including unlawful appropriation of state water resources. He was sentenced to 30 days in jail and fined over $1,500. The incident sparked intense backlash. Residents said it was simply tyranny. If a person cannot own the rain that falls on their own land, what do they actually own?
That's a great question. What do they actually own? This was my first time hearing about this, and I have some thoughts, but I think it's best to just kind of hear, laws and to get an idea of if this is even allowable. I mean, obviously we know it's not allowable based off what they share, but there's some insight of another video I have I want to watch before I give my thoughts on it. Let me get that set up. Let's get that going.
Can you be arrested for collecting rainwater? Water right laws in Western states often claim all precipitation belongs to the state or existing water right holders, not property owners. Setting up barrels or cisterns to collect rainwater can be classified as illegal diversion of state resources. Some states have prosecuted people with felony charges, carrying potential prison time for nothing more than collecting rain from their own roofs. These prosecutions often target self-sufficient homesteaders and off-grid living enthusiasts rather than applying the law equally to everyone. This isn't about water conservation. It's about using criminal law to enforce dependency on municipal water systems and prevent true self-sufficiency.
I mean, here's the thing, right? I do agree that, like some of the people were saying, hey, we think it's tyranny. And he's saying, it's really to like push back against, self-sufficiency and, to be dependent. But at the end of the day, the law is in place, and it has to be followed unless you want to go to jail or put yourself in a position to where you can be fined or, be convicted of essentially breaking the law. I find it interesting that this is actually a law, but I imagine that it does probably have something to do with control, because it doesn't make sense to get upset with someone, because all of it, like I've said on this channel before, all of it goes back to money, because it doesn't make sense to have a law in place to where you go and you arrest somebody for collecting water that falls on their property and them using it in a certain way that benefits their property, the animals around, or so on and so on, as long as they're not selling the water. To me, it just shows their hand, like, hey, we want to make sure we keep things under control. And when I say under the control, I don't even mean regulate it. I just mean like they want all the money to come to them. I do agree with that. I do believe that there's some truth to that, because if you don't need their water, then there's money that they can't get from because you're not using, the usage is down. And if people start doing that, it affects money. It really does. And I'm not, how do I want to say this? I don't want to sound like I'm complaining at all. I don't want to sound like I'm also anti-government or anything like that. I just think certain things just show the greed in our society, in our systems that we have in place, But at the same time, if it's a law, then there are certain consequences that come with breaking that law. I'm all for, people standing up for what's right in terms of their faith. Like if there's a law in place and it goes against your faith, then I don't think you should follow that law. I think you should do what God say do. But we live in this country, we have to abide by certain laws. If it doesn't go against our faith, just because we don't agree with it doesn't mean that we shouldn't follow it. If it doesn't hinder us from doing what we were called to do, then we should obey it. We really should. And I know that's probably frustrating. Maybe that's not even a take that you want to hear, but I think that's the right way to be. Laws are in place, and whether they're taking advantage of us or not, that's not something that's up for debate until we are able to maybe get those laws changed and get some liberties. Until then, we'd have to just keep doing it that way. And I just think also in the grand scheme of things, it's not worth it. Like, it's not worth being charged, being arrested, possible felonies, possible conviction, possible prison time, and then you're going to have to spend money on attorneys. It's just not worth it. If you have a job, you're going to be away from your job. If you have a family, be away from your family. It's just not worth it. I get it. I like to be self-sufficient. I don't like for anybody to be, ruling me with an iron fist. I get it, but it's a law. But I do think that's pretty cool that he was able to, build these barrels and, be sufficient in a way to where he didn't need to use their water in the capacity that he would if he didn't have that. But it ain't worth going to jail. I don't want to be in prison. What you in here for? Man, I was collecting rainwater off the roof. What? Yeah, and I refused to stop, so I got locked up. I don't want, man, nah, that's not for me. But here's the takeaway, right? I do believe, our government at times and the systems we have in place rule with a biased hand, with a heavy hand towards some people, more so than others. And where I find peace in that is I know that we all will stand before God, and that's just on the spiritual sense. We all will stand before God, and the laws that were put in place for greed and those who put them in place, they'll have to answer to God. Now, on a practical sense, I say the takeaway is you got to count the cost. Like, yeah, you may want to be self-sufficient. You may want to take on these ventures to where you can live off the grid and all of that. But if you end up being arrested and having to spill out more money for court costs, attorney fees, away from your family, away from your home, now you just taking on more stress. So sometimes you really have to weigh it out to see if it's really worth it. And for me, it's not worth it. Collecting rainwater isn't worth it. Your water bill may be higher than you want, and you have to pay out more than you want. That's just kind of how it works. You got to count the cost. I personally don't think it's worth it. Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comment section. Don't forget to connect with the brand online at www.there'shopebrand.com. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. And if you'd like to donate, that's in the description as well. I'll catch y'all in the next video.